Andy,
Vamos.
we're live.
We're here in the flesh. It's Friday. Not that I distinguish days anyways, but it is Friday today.
It is Friday. Well, I am. Tomorrow I'm taking a day off.
Are you?
Yeah.
It's a nice day. It's a week. You even have to designate a day off on a weekend. That's how much you work.
Well, it's 20 degrees, sunny, and I want a slackline.
Oh, that's great. Well, I might join you on a slackline.
So today, folks, we have Niels Elzenga.
Elzenga. I love the last name, actually. Elzenga. And we are going to be discussing healing family relationships on
A Wonderful Chaos. Hey, we did. We're back. We're back.
We're back. So let's just, as we like to, preamble a little bit about our guests before they come on.
Yeah, make them feel very
uncomfortable.
Loved.
No, it depends on how much love they can receive, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Niels, it was funny because Niels, I got introduced to Niels, or I didn't even get introduced to Niels. Actually, David Kaiser, who is like my second biggest fan behind you regarding the Last Letter book.
Yeah.
He bought, 8 copies and sent them out to friends. And then those friends would often say, hey, listen, can we meet? I think there's 2 or 3 now in the meantime. And Niels was one of those friends. He confused the hell out of me one day by sending me an email saying something that I misinterpreted, like, how did we meet? So he's like, how did we meet? We met in the front room, but it wasn't what he asked me, but it was how I interpreted the text message.
Gotcha.
And then I was thinking to myself, maybe I'm going insane already. Maybe I'm the one that's has dementia. But in that talk, we sat and he shared with me that he actually had written his own book. And that book came out recently. And if you haven't seen him, then you've probably seen him somewhere, because that's kind of where his face has been plastered all over, wherever it could be plastered. And
in the Netherlands, by the way.
In the Netherlands, yes. But maybe, who knows where it goes from there. And then there's this very nice one at Hema.
I love it.
In case you're looking for a Hema purchase. And it's beautiful for me because, I in some ways I feel like an old guy. I know I'm 50, but like after you've gone through a lot of shit in your life and lost a lot of people you loved, you kind of become a little bit more surrendering to your environment, right? So I've noticed, we'll have other episode on a kind of elder's wisdom. It's sort of like the idea that as you age, there's a natural insight that comes with that, hopefully. And I'm often surprised when I recognize that insight in people that I find to be younger than me. Like, I'm like, wow, so you didn't necessarily need to, or maybe you went through something, a different pain, but then I recognize in their eyes a depth of like understanding that that it's almost like I notice when I'm with that understanding, I sink into my own feelings. So if someone's in their head and just chat, then I kind of like, okay, I don't feel the groundedness. So with Niels, I felt very much grounded as we just sat in the front parlor and spoke.
I just love the way you articulate, Andy.
Is that right?
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that was the contact with Niels, and then yeah. And so when we had this and he had the book, it was obvious that we were going to have him on.
Yeah.
So I think without further ado, it might be nice to now bring on Niels Elzenga.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Elzenga. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Absolutely not. And this is going to be a fun one because it's from experience I can say it's all but impossible for non-Dutchies to pronounce this one correctly. But I'll say it. It's actually Elzenga.
Elzenga.
Niels Elzenga. Which is a Frisian name originally.
That
explains it.
Yeah,
that explains.
You're from Friesland, Jesus.
I'm a Viking. Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Somewhere down the line.
For those that don't know, it's another country, but they somehow annexed it within the Netherlands.
Yeah. Like I heard it's very flat there. Not much happening.
Yeah, you mean the rest of the Netherlands being so mountainous and
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see the video I put online weeks ago when I like walked in and I saw a hill in a park I was at with Ronnie?
You were at the Amsterdam
At the Amsterdam was the boss. We looked up. We said, without even speaking, where we said, "Wow, we've reached the highest point of the Netherlands." And then I posted it, and I got like violent reactions from the public. Like, no, it's actually where was it? I don't even remember.
Well, Jet said Nijmegen. I said Arnhem.
Yeah,
No, it's in Limburg, guys. The highest. It's definitely in
Exactly.
Limburg. In the south.
The debate begins.
Actually, it's the canal bridge here outside of on the Prinsengracht.
Probably, yeah.
So Neil,
Yeah.
I actually, what happened to our backdrop? I haven't read your book, and I actually don't know anything about it.
Really?
No.
Oh, beautiful.
So I didn't have time to prepare, and I realized I don't want to prepare.
Nice.
And I'm curious, like I know Andy's story when he took his phone, he started writing his book on his phone. I'm wondering, what was that moment? What do you remember? What was going on inside you? What kind of emotion you were feeling when you took a pen or the keyboard and you started putting out your story into a kind of more tangible documentation?
I guess it was a rather bipolar mixture of absolute terror and absolute elation. Like I felt when I started this book writing project, and when I actually sat down to write it, I mean, it was crystal clear to me that this was the biggest professional project that I ever undertook in size and scope, and possibly also in significance. And it was really like looking up, like standing at the foothills of Mount Everest, and like and thinking this is going to be a hell of a climb. But also, like, you know, the excitement of like, oh my God, am I actually doing this? And that was something that stayed with me throughout the writing process, which took me a year. That I had these moments of absolute like pinching myself. It's like, I'm actually writing a book about my family history. Oh my God! And I'm commissioned to do that by a big publishing house, etc. I have a contract. It's actually going to be published if I don't screw up in a very bad way, etc. And then at the same time, also like, wow, like how am I going to pull this off? Do I have this in me? That was also like a real thing. Like, do I actually have this in me?
And from the point when you began writing to the finish, how long did that take?
That took very, very neatly 1 calendar year. So I basically started quite literally January 1st, 2019.
Nice.
On Bali. That was.
I was going to say, you did your New Year's resolution.
I mean,
one of the few that actually followed through.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a Capricorn, so I have a ton of like discipline, which, you know, can also boil over into rigidity and all that. But yeah, I knew I had the discipline to sit my ass down basically, and you know, just put in the daily hours. But I started writing on Bali because I had gotten this little what do you call it? Een voorschot.
Advance.
Yeah, a little advance from the publishing house, and I was like, beginning of January, I suffer winter dips in the Netherlands, having to write a book all by myself.
Yeah, I
might go for like better territory, and Bali was amazing because it's cheaper there. I could like write longer for the same money, and I just had the sunshine, and I could surf and all that. So that's where I started for the first 4 months. And yeah, then came back to the Netherlands and finished again pretty neatly by the end of the year. I think I handed in the final manuscript on the 3rd of January of this year. So that was,
wow.
Yeah. Like,
that's great.
Like a year.
How do you get a publishing company to fund you? Like normally, I or at least I'm a little bit uneducated in this. I'm with the idea that you first write a book. No?
No. Oh. No one writes books. Everyone buys the concept, hopefully with somebody that can sell everything without them having to do any work. That's what I've learned in my unfortunate days in this industry.
I mean, I have to say that I had a bit of a similar idea as Bambos, that, you know, writers are these people that kind of have this deep unstoppable urge to write, and they just write, and then they create this book, and then you go and sort of try and sell it, and often that doesn't happen, and they end up alcoholics in a bar. I worked in a bar in my student days where there were a lot of these unpublished writers, which were actually just basically alcoholics. So
I was gonna say, it's like a Billy Joel song, Piano Man, just give me another beer.
I mean, that's a different subject, but there is something like terribly lonely in writing a book, and that it can also be splendid isolation, like where like I said, like, oh my God, I'm in this whole world that nobody knows of. I'm creating something, but it can also feel like I'm just really alone. So that's true as well. But
I was just saying to Bambos, just quickly to Bambos. So when I send out to publishers, the first rule with the publisher was don't send us anything you've written. First rule, send us an outline of what you'd like to write, and we'll decide if it's interesting enough for us. That's how it goes. Yeah.
Well, this process, to be honest with you, I got really lucky, I guess, in the sense that I was actually approached by the publishing house to publish this book, because to be even franker with you, I'd never really considered the traveling that I did with my dad book worthy. Like when I was traveling, I didn't have that idea yet. I knew I was going to publish as in a newspaper because I work as a journalist, but when that article came out, I was like, okay, now, well, that's it. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I actually received a phone call from an editor at the publishing house saying, "Hey, we think this is book material. Would you like to come and discuss that?" And that was actually one of these like bit like cinematographic scenes almost, where you're like, yeah, I think I can. Yeah, Thursday morning works fine. And then putting down the phone and going, like being all fucking over the moon.
Yeah,
over the moon and all over town.
Yeah,
like every time you see yourself, you must be. That's me.
Yeah, because that's a life detour. That wasn't intended, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, my face is everywhere.
Well, to be honest, this advertising campaign is a bit of a lucky shot again, where sort of an opportunity in the crisis, because this goes through a friend of a friend, where he worked for this company that sort of exploits all these screens, and their whole industry imploded basically. So they all of a sudden had all these screens, and they started kind of giving away that space to initiatives that they liked. So
wow, I love it. That's great ingenuity. Yeah. That is so great to hear. Yeah. Let's plug them then. What is the name of that company so that we make sure they have a shout out, or at least send it out? Anyone that go ahead.
They're called Oceans Outdoor.
Oceans Outdoor. We'll put them in the thing. Anyone that supports in that level has to be appreciated. Yeah. That's beautiful.
I agree with that.
I have a question that was interesting when you were asking, and Bambos asked you a question that raised perked my interest, is that you said you wrote about your family. Now, how comfortable were you writing about your family, and were there moments when you had to edit because you're like, I can't share that much, otherwise it might have implications?
Strangely enough, or at least I think I surprised myself somewhat with the lack of problems I experienced in writing about very delicate and intimate material. I think because I've been already for a few years, I'm on this path of of really writing or making public through the medium that I know, which is journalism, like inner processes that are often very vulnerable, like depressions, the death of my mom, my experience with psychedelics, the healing I found through psychedelics, all kinds of sort of touchy subjects. I put them out there already, and I always received so much like recognition and love, and I could really see how readers opened up and were thankful, like, oh my God, finally somebody that dares reaching these subjects. And so with the book, I kind of knew, and like maybe things on an intuitive level. It's like this this is worth something. This is actually, I'm not doing this, just because I can. I think this is actually, my story is actually of value, and that's weird to say. My story is actually of value, but I'm owning that more and more. It's like my story is actually of value in the sense that it can help other people heal in ways that I've healed. And I get that fed back all the time now, also through people that are reading or have read the book.
And so, was there any feedback? I mean, so people that you knew in your life read the book. How did they then react to it when they read it?
Yeah, you asked about the editing process, which was interesting. Like, so essentially, what happened is I said to my father, who is he's the main protagonist, even more so than myself. So I said to him from the beginning, it's like, Dad, you have veto right on everything. First, I had to ask him, like, are you okay with me writing the book? Of course, and he was, which I have to thank him for and give him credit for. And then I said to him, listen, everything I write, you read it first. You tell me what you think of it, and we'll take it from there. But what happened is, from Bali, actually, when I had written the first chapter, I sent it over to him over email, and I received this email back from him saying, "Son, I didn't sleep last night." And I was like, "Fuck, this is not good," because the sort of the story arc, and that this is also what happened during the 4 weeks that we spent traveling together. It's like, in the beginning there was a lot of friction, and like we couldn't. We had to really feel each other out and our different rhythms, and I was irritated all the time, and he felt like judged, etc., and that reflects in the first chapter. So I said to him, Dad, maybe I write the whole book first, and then you write it, then you read it, and still with the veto right and everything. And then he was like, he had peace with it, and he edited like a few times, but tiny things. Like, for example, somewhere in the book he says, what he literally said is, I only learned to properly fuck after my 50th, is what he literally said. And then he said, yeah, son, maybe you better correct it into like, I only learned how to make proper love after 50.
I like your dad.
God forbid I should name it in that terminology. What would people think of me?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, so, and but it was all so tiny that it was really beautiful to have that process with him, actually. But the last thing to say about this is that there's also a lot of other people named. For example, the man that my mother had a relationship with, like a polyamorous situation, before, during, and after my birth. I also had to like loop him in. It's like, because he's a friend of my father. Still from the student days. So I had to loop him in as well and say, hey, how do you see this? And like, I did this with everybody that's in the book, and I think, let's say out of 15 characters, maybe half of them said, would you mind using a synonym? And actually, Geertje, which is my father's partner in the book, is not called Geertje. She was one of the people. She was one of the people that wanted to remain anonymous, in a sense.
Like, when I think of your book and the way you wrote it, it feels like it's a last letter. Like, you dedicated a whole book, and putting your heart into it, and then this is my gift.
What it feels like to me is like, it feels like the closure of an era. Like, I've essentially spent, from 17, when my mom died of brain cancer, until sort of, maybe until the book came out, like healing, processing, getting to understand my triggers. I suffered from depressions in my late 20s, and now I know what they were. Like, basically my system crying out like that there was unprocessed stuff. But at the time I couldn't see that, so I was groping around in the darkness a lot. And this book, it's really beautiful, actually. Like, it's like all that has now literally been externalized, like, and it's sealed in this palpable product that is now in the world and is now flying. And obviously my wish for it is to fly as high as it can. And I feel in a sense liberated to now to now enter a new phase of maybe giving more, and like it's more about creating the life that I want now, and less about maybe, you know, exploring my pain.
Yeah, beautiful.
Like, what was your biggest, like, when I write, it's more to self-reflect, and I kind of always have discoveries when I'm writing. Did you have any huge insights or like, wow, if I didn't write this book, I would not have touched upon this?
During the writing, you mean?
Yeah.
One of the things, and I had, of course, like experienced that in during the journey I made with my father, but when writing, it became very obvious, is that he is actually in our connection between me and him. He was actually, it was way easier for him to share his emotions and his process with me than the other way around. So that was a really strange discovery, where it's like, okay, so my dad, who is, you know, older generation, has, you know, the archetype is like the older generation is more emotionally closed off than our generation, because we have all these possibilities and, you know, the spiritual movement, etc. But with my dad, I was like, he is actually, when I ask him something, and I did so often, it's like I just, you know, put a quarter in and say, hey, you know, what did you think of mom having this affair with a friend of you, you know? And then he would just open up and like and talk for the rest of the evening, and I'd be there on my phone, like typing away and downloading all that. But that was a big takeaway. And a second big takeaway for me was like, through really diving into my family history, including, which I also have put in the book, including reading and actually using in the book the diaries that my mom left, which was a huge decision, because I mean, diaries are not meant for other people's eyes, right? So I had this whole process going on of like, mom, you know, give me a sign. Am I actually allowed to do this? And you know, having a whole process with my sister, and it was very emotional to actually do that. And through reading those diaries and through talking with various people from that time, I gained a lot more insight about how unstable and how turbulent that era actually was for my parents, and into what kind of turmoil I was actually born. And one kind of painful example of this is that and this conversation happened after the journey, when I discussed with my dad, or my dad told me about a fight my mom and him had when she was pregnant with me, where and they were driving. They lived in Delft at the time. It's a Dutch town, and they were driving home, and they had a terrible fight. And my mom said, "I'm going to abort now. Drive me to Amsterdam. I'm going to sleep with a friend, and I'm going to abort this child. I don't want it. Fuck it. I'm done." And my dad had this whole panic attack, and well, they somehow resolved it and ended up going home together and stuff. But these things are like, I was sitting there writing or researching this, and I'm thinking, I was actually a hair's breadth away from not being here, from having been aborted, and that triggered a whole process of anger and like towards my mother, because what I'd basically done over the years is kind of sanctify my mom, you know, like dead, sort of my holy mother. Everything that's good in my life, I thank to her. Everything that doesn't work in my life or that I find ugly in myself, that's my dad's fault. And that black and white scenario, that started to become unstable and eventually just disintegrated. And that was actually the first time I went to primal therapy, which is this whole intense week of like going into your mommy and daddy issues essentially. And I had this epic, sort of cosmic wrestle and fight with my mom, where I let out all this rage and all this shit that I never even knew was there. And that's been really, really, really liberating. Can tell you that.
Well, it's as he speaks. Of course, we met after you had the last letter, right? So we discussed. I think you said our stories were really similar, and as I hear you speak, I hear exactly the similar overtones of course, losing my mom and the sanctification of her, and then the realization that I had to heal. I needed to accept that she was human, just a normal person with their own problems.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I'm sitting here is thanks to our common friend David, who gave me your book. And I think I told you so quite literally. It was like reading my own story. And it's that kind of recognition that is very powerful, that immediately also drew me to like wanting to meet you and like, who is this man that has such similar has had such similar experiences. And that's also what I'm imagining, that what you get fed back from people that read your book, and what I'm hearing more and more from readers of mine is like that, like when people recognize each other in difficult emotions or in trauma, and they feel seen in that, that in itself is already healing.
For sure.
That you're like,
Yeah, you said something as well earlier, and I'm just going back to that, where I could very much identify with your words when you said, "Is my story worth telling?" Or like that that like there's so many, like you can. I remember always looking outside of myself, and say, "Well, there's so many people suffering more than I am, or there's so many people that have so much bigger issues with their lives than I do." Like there was a weird sense of not valuing. It took me years to value my experience enough to write it, and even afterwards I still didn't value it. It was just, if anyone says you're a good author, like I'll defer it and say I've written something that some people can identify with, like as if the writing isn't about the writing, it's about, does it touch somebody, and some people it does and some people it doesn't.
That's word to word almost my experience, where like celebrating the existence of this book, like really taking in compliments or like touched reactions, really let it sink in that this book is actually of value. That remains so difficult, which brings me to this idea, or it's actually a reality, I think, that for people it's so much easier. We're so conditioned to take criticism and to take pain and to go on with that, and we're not wired at all. We're not trained or conditioned at all to actually celebrate and to actually let in praise. And again, like I'm fairly sure that this book would not have been there without the editor calling me. Like I mean, your book, Andy, you wrote it, I think, out of your own initiative, right? Yeah. So that's already a level of confidence, maybe, or at least an awareness of like surrender.
Yeah, surrender. Because I said I'm going to write. I don't know what's going to be. I'm just going to write. I just dedicated to writing.
But what was there a seed somewhere, like a voice telling you like I need to do this, or how did that work?
No, I was bored with life. I just got bored. And I said, I've got to do something. And what is something I haven't done in my life? Well, this is something to do. That was it. Why are you guys laughing? It's true. I mean, what's so humorous about that?
Like just knowing and living Andy, like he's so at peace with himself and with the world. Like he can like get into this kind of routine, and at some point he's like, I need to contribute something, or I need to bring more meaning. And I remember like
I still don't know why you guys think that's amusing than what I just said earlier, to be honest with you.
Oh, because it's not normal.
Okay. Well,
for me, I mean, what is funny for me is recognizing boredom as a powerful motivator, actually.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Oh, it's either that or Cheetos, huh?
Oh yeah, I've done that. The nachos next door are not good to me.
I mean, the other day I read something on Facebook which really resonated, and that was like, there was this thing of like the fear of being too much, and then this person wrote like, but I'm actually more afraid of inertia, of like of the stagnancy of not doing it, or of like, because every time I think, and this I think this is universal, unless you're Buddha, when you put out something big, like when you launch a big project, when you really which really has your heart and soul, that's vulnerable stuff to do.
Yeah.
And that's practice also. But I'm realizing more and more and more, it's like, that's actually the daily practice that I want to be involved with. Is like, what can I create today? What can I contribute? What can I beautify here in the world? Instead, and I've done this. I mean, it takes one to recognize when I've done this for a long time, like being stuck, being clamped down, being afraid of like express. I think expression is basically what we are here to do. We're here to express ourselves. And
if we overcome our fear of whatever society, how they might react to it, of course.
I mean, yes, like, and I have to admit, like, I've never, and I'm knocking on wood, like not calling it in, but I've never had like frontal headwind, in the sense, like, I was thinking, for example, when this book came out, like, what if I get a devastating review somewhere? What if some other journalist, says this is just a load of rubbish, and you always hear like famous people, describe how they, stop following that stuff because it's so damaging. And I can kind of feel into that, where it's like, if somebody would burn this book down, it would be I can feel it now in my heart. Like, that would be really painful stuff. So, but that's, again, also the risk. That's also the edge where you feel alive, the exhilaration of like, I'm doing something, and you can feel it in your body when that aliveness is there. I feel.
Going to that, and this is what I find so curious. It's also what reminds me of Bambos doing his hour-long sessions, when he, kind of shows himself vulnerable without a subject for an hour, which is already quite a kind of an amazing position to put yourself in. But when you're talking about writing from that level of vulnerability, in some weird way, of course, I can identify with it because that's how I also write. But the weird thing is that it's like I'm being vulnerable so that other people who might have similar issues can see themselves in that writing. And what I found quite interesting is that people who have a challenge going in vulnerability in themselves often will have less connection to the writing itself. That's at least what I've been discovering in my journey, because they're looking for, give me the 5 steps. I know you've written a book that's really nice, great, but what are the 5 things I can do tomorrow to be successful?
I mean, it's like I sometimes find myself quoting cheesy spiritual quotes all the time, but like, your vibe attracts a tribe. I find there's so much truth in that. Like, if you, as Andy, put out a book, it will find the people that are ready to receive it, and it will not find the people that are not ready to receive it. But what the beauty and the magic, I think, in this type of work is that you extend an invitation. It's like, hey, this is actually possible. Like, it's actually possible to to really open up about your pain, about, in my case, about, all the trauma that happened as a kid, and the whole process that I'm still in, to an extent. And to extend the invitation to other people, say, hey, this is possible, and then I think in other people, you can open something up that if they're ready. Like, if they're not ready, then they're not. But like,
you make me aware of something now, and it's kind of funny. And I had a lot of discussions about like the subtitle for the last book, Embracing Pain to Create a Meaningful Life. And as you spoke, I realized now through this discussion, I was really clear that I didn't want it positioned in a way that would attract anyone that wouldn't connect to whatever was going to be in the content. So you are right. To some degree, if someone's all ready to go into a book that has that as a subtitle, you've already kind of pre-selected the kind of individuals that are gonna follow that vibe.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's also, I think, the challenge. At least I recall, for example, the title of my book is, for the people that don't speak Dutch. It's about the travels with my father, essentially. And I recall being I think I was 1/3 in writing, so I had, out of the 9, I had like 3 chapters finished, and all of a sudden, my editor is on the phone. I was still in Bali, and says, "Oh, by the way, we need a title sort of now." Because they work with long schedules, like, so their brochure for the spring 2020 already had to be done, la la la. And I was like, what? And then we had to go into this process of coming up with a title and the artwork for it as well, because, oh, do you like this art studio style more, or this one? And I was like, leave me the fuck alone, I'm writing. You know what I mean? Yeah, but then that had to be done, and now this is the title. And sometimes I'm still thinking, could that have been like a deeper title, or like covering the meaning of the book better? Or it's also for me, because I'm very perfectionistic. It's also a very interesting exercise in letting go, because now it's out there, and all the time I'm seeing, oh, maybe this could have been tweaked, and what if sorry, can do anything about it.
Bambas knows I was at one moment in the last book, and I surrendered the whole way through. Like, I was in full surrender mode, and then the publisher sent me back book covers, and my stomach sank. Like, it was a painful, because I wanted to surrender and just say, you know what, it's going to be whatever it's going to be. The universe is. And then I get back one cover, and it was like this kind of, when a typical hero's journey, the guy with his hands in the air on a mountain, and like my stomach just dropped. And I was like, all of those, the peaceful, Gandhi-esque Andy was now like, oh no, this can't happen. This can't happen. It was just a very funny moment of like fear, uncertainty, doubt, like questioning. All the flow is gone then. Yeah.
Can you describe to me, Andy, like, what does it mean for you to go into full surrender in order to create something? Like, do you follow a certain is that a practice, or how does that work?
It is certainly, like, I find you were talking about the vibe. Like, I find people that I feel the vibe with, and then I say, okay, the vibe is all I can find, and then I surrender to the vibe. So, example being, the man yesterday on our show was Steve McCurdy, who did the voiceover work for the book. And I met this man, and I just loved him. And I said, whatever you do, I don't care. Like, just do it. Just enjoy it. And then I could see, because of the connection we had, whatever he was going to come up with was going to be perfect, right? He did the worst Dutch accents you could ever imagine, but it was perfect. Like, right. Yeah, it sounded like half mixed between a Chinese and a German, but it was like, it is whatever it was. And then the publisher, right? The publisher, we had a very vulnerable talk about him being bipolar, and I just could see, I can connect with this man. We can have the discussions, the hard discussions that we might need to have at some point, and I'm just going to surrender and let him decide. And that was the instance where the book cover wasn't the one that I wanted, but we got through it because we could connect again on this intimate level of, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What this really opens up for me is something that's very relevant, I think, to where I'm at in my life, is where you seem to have this capacity where you're able to kind of dip into the undercurrent of what's happening. Yeah. So often there's all this stuff happening on surface level, but there's actually an undercurrent of trust, maybe, or of surrender, or of like, how can we meet in that undercurrent? And I think that for me, that undercurrent is I'm learning to listen to that more and more and more as the source of my creativity, actually, instead of being constantly headily scattered into like, oh, now this project, and now this little thing, and oh, I shouldn't forget that, and like,
just to touch on that, if I may, because it's a really beautiful, and I'll talk about this all the time, and it's something that feels like it's ingrained in me so much at the moment, that it's like there's the polarity, right? The structure, the need, the detail, big picture thinking, seeing beyond what's going on at this moment, and then playing it back and forth. And what I know of myself is that it was really hard for me to find that balance in my own life for a lot of years, because I'd go into details, which means I'd stay up till 3 a.m, knocking out stuff to get it done. And then I'd wake up feeling absent, hole in my stomach, not feeling any joy in life. And then I'd be like, oh, wow, the joy comes from also allowing that spaciousness to be present while I'm getting stuff done. And I've seen that, like, the consciousness around that kind of the tension and that polarity, if one doesn't have it, right, or they're not in touch with that in themselves, then they'll get stuck in one or the other paradigm of being in the world.
Yeah.
So what I've sensed is that, you know, a lot of times when people get stuck, it's normally because they actually are getting stuck in the detail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if someone isn't getting anything done, it's because they're stuck in the big picture thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, is like, the more I get in touch with my own energy, you could actually often feel it. Like I have a tendency, for example, getting a little overly structured, like getting a little lost in the planning, and then like my Google Calendar has to look picture perfect. And like, you know, I could easily, you know, lose a day on I don't know, organizing my online environment, which is never organized anyway, because it's just a chaos. And you know, you better just accept it and, you know, do as much as you can. But like, one thing that's been really present for me throughout the book writing, and now even more so, I think, as I'm launching new projects, is stop planning, start doing. Start acting from that place of not knowing, not having the oversight, because a book, like, there's no way you're going to have oversight of what it's going to look like in a year. Like, it's impossible. So you better just start doing. But
the brain needs control. The brain needs to feel like, I know what's going to happen. I know the stages. I know, because if I don't surrender, if I surrender to the process, then it's like, well, what will fall through the cracks then?
But that's what I mean with my energy, because like, if after a while of like being stuck in that brainy spot, I have a headache, you know, or I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, there's grooves here from like having this face on for like for the last 3 hours. I better, you know, oh, there's a world out there, you know. Relax, breathe in, breathe out, you know, maybe shake a little, and you know, what can we do from that place?
Yeah.
The perfectionist in part of us, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bambos, you're the epitome of that. Actually, what we were just like, good. No.
I'm curious where this is going.
No, this is all good. You know, it's not like pick on Bambos time. No, there's no one that I know that will take an idea and turn it into an active decision to do something like Bambos. So in some strange way, he's the epitome of an individual who says, you need to do in order to learn the lesson, in order to decide what you're going to do next.
Yes.
Amen. And there's that doing that. I mean, I remember years ago when Bambos, we were first working and I was trying to support, I was like, okay, you're going to do this, offer tourists the chance to take pictures, then you're going to have to go to Central Station and basically invite people to come at 12. And then when whoever shows up, you do the tour. You know, little do I know he's showing up there day after day and no one is coming to meet him there. But he still does it. I don't know for how many weeks. It wasn't a few days.
3 months.
It was like, and he just did it. And I'm like sitting there like, okay, at some point you got to kind of rethink that strategy. You know, like, alter it a little bit, think maybe. But the beauty was that you were learning whatever you needed to learn to take the next step.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's some beauty in that a lot of people I see in my life never do, and therefore they look on the sidelines and say, "Oh yeah, I could do that, but it won't work anyways."
Go ahead, Bob.
I also did that because I needed to make sure that I would take it all the way. Like, it was raining, it was whatever, I'm showing up. I need to trust that that's how bad I wanted to make this happen. And I didn't have a choice. I burned all the bridges behind me.
Yeah.
Which is a very fucking good idea. Like, I listened to a beautiful speech by Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I happen to find a very inspiring man. And he had a speech of like 15 minutes. And his basic point was, never have a plan B. Fuck plan B. Because if you have a plan B, subconsciously energy is already leaking towards plan B. And he said, I've never had a plan B. I just, there's plan A and I'm gonna commit. I'm committing. Boom. And I mean, this is, hindsight, la la la, but like, because he's old or
No, it's
sort of
brilliant.
old now, but this is actually open up my eyes. It's like, when does something fly? When you're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in, and you actually do burn your bridges. So that's very inspirational for me. And I've personally spent a lot of time, I think, in my 20s and 30s. I'm almost 40 now. Kind of good genes, my friend. Good genes, and a healthy lifestyle. But yeah, it's like basically standing on the sidelines, or like trying to consider, debate my next move, instead of, dude, you should have been on the playing field already. Like, just make a move and then go from there, and commit to it. If you make a move, commit. And I know that's, we could I think spend an entire episode on the meaning of the word commit, or like there's a lot of these words that become maybe a bit old in a way, but commitment is key, man. It's fucking key.
I would say if you don't feel the word when you say it, then you don't know what it means.
Yeah, well, I feel the word commitment.
I know when
in my body, like
I feel it in my body. I know, just like when I know Bambos commits, or when I committed to do the 3-month tour in the U.S. without having any place to speak in. Like, I knew it was going to happen. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to travel for 3 months. It's going to be 4 months from now. I'll have 60 sessions. I was Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was no plan B. I was like, even said if no one shows up, it's okay. Like, I'll enjoy the trip to the U.S. assuming I'm doing this, regardless of what the world is going to throw in my path.
Yeah, but I think on a deeper level, you already knew that there was people going to show up as well. Like, you knew that that was not going to happen.
You know what? Of course, there was that sense, but I also honestly didn't care. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
I remember on one bookstore, I showed up and no one came to the bookstore. So all I did is I recorded myself at the desk with no one there as my kind of my post. It's like, this is and
it's hilarious.
This is like the day before I was on the biggest morning show in San Francisco. So I go from this big morning show, which looks really appealing, like, wow, Andy's living the dream. And the next day in Monterey,
it was like this
at a desk. And each one was like equally beautiful. It was like, wow, how I would have never imagined I'd be here. And wow, isn't it great I can be here, right?
Yeah.
So it's that celebration that I see as
exactly
is like, that's living. Everything else is trying and getting stuck in an idea or an expectation.
Yeah.
Like
the thing that you guys are speaking about, I did a live yesterday for 1 hour.
You told, because Andy mentioned that, but I don't know the concept. So what is it you do, Bambos?
I just jump on a live, no context. I don't give myself or anyone anything to hold on to or any reason to click on me. Like, I just go on. And yesterday I cried for the whole hour. Like, I was so in touch with gratitude and feeling so touched by the way I'm living that I couldn't find the words. And the only thing I could do was cry for 60 whole fucking minutes. And the tears started actually before I went live. So it just continued.
So you actually cried for an hour live on Facebook?
I cried I talked in between, mumbling, but it was pretty much just feeling. Every time I would talk, I would go to my head and I saw the views would go down. I'm like, keep crying.
Keep the audience. Keep crying. What they want. Give them what they want, Bambo.
The pain, passion, obsession of life.
Yeah. And you got to realize is that as he's doing this, there's a lot of people that don't understand and are judging him as well on the other side, right? Yeah. Which is like, okay, and to allow him to allow himself to go there is incredible.
2 women today asking to give me a hug and some sweetness, but I'm not doing I'm in isolation.
Yeah,
but I've also had a lot of criticism.
Yeah, but those two women, that's it. Even if it would have been one of them.
Yep.
It's like in order to step like into the limelight or into onto the playing field like that, you have to be willing also to antagonize, and you have to. I mean, again, that's a little bit of a cliche to say, but like you have to have a bit of a fuck it mentality, like not caring about the opinions of others, and trusting again that vibe attracts tribe and so on.
Yeah.
And if I look at my own experience, like I'm also, the older I become, the more I also realize that my judgments are a direct result of my own level of awareness. Mm-hmm. Meaning, to give you a concrete example, which I personally think is quite funny, like I used to judge the fuck out of people going all emotional on Facebook, with their whole inner process, and like, women would often like, dance like a goddess, and I would fuck off, like leave me alone, and now I'm actually doing the same thing.
Yes.
Oh, you see, man. So that's such a powerful insight for me. Is like, don't judge what you don't understand. Like, and I get this all the time. For example, I'm very open about psychedelics, like the way that psychedelic, I call it medicine, has helped me. And always when the judgments come, it's people that haven't tried them themselves. Yeah. So like I got a reaction on an article I wrote about this from a psychologist somewhere in the Netherlands, an older woman. Says, yeah, I agree with everything. Embodiment is beautiful, but this psychedelics thing, it's like, I think it's wrong for this and this and this and this reason. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I've always been too afraid to try it myself. And I'm like,
I got the same from my wife. There you have it. My wife is like, Andy, you're not allowed to discuss that on the show.
Oh, wow. Am I gonna catch flack from your wife?
No. I'm gonna catch flack from her, not you. She doesn't care what you say. She's like, no, you don't actually. Andy, you do know that stuff is illegal, right? She reminds me of that. Oh, like she looks up any of the psychedelics that are on. Like, Andy, you do know that if you share that you tried that isn't reflective, right?
Oops.
Don't do drugs, guys.
Yes. So David Kaiser says amen to your comment. There was one thing you also said now that I really resonated with, and it also connects back to what Bambos is doing with his lives, is that as I and all of us, I hear, do our process of however we decide to express, because all of us get to express in the way we express, that in it touching someone, the reason for us doing it becomes apparent.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, wow, that is the reason I did it. But I couldn't have said that before because that wasn't the intent. The intent was me being true to my own self. And now the fact that someone connects with it, that just means that it actually has meaning. It gets meaning through that process. So let's cherish, or let's celebrate that all in ourselves now for a moment. Just how great is it that we've allowed ourselves to be so free that others can actually learn, grow, and experience themselves in new ways. That's great.
Yeah, now I'm the one to say amen, because it's like something that you said earlier, Bambos, is also touched something in me around, like, sometimes I get these bursts of like joy around, like, oh my God, look how far I've come. Like, look what a free and expressive life I've already created. And I get these glimpses of like these insights into the future as like, wow, if I just continue what I'm doing, the future's so bright. There's so much excitement and so much life and so much connection wanting to happen. Like opening up my valves just for all that to come through me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I guess I was feeling really also that, but I was feeling really touched at the idea of, fuck, I don't give my brain an inch to hold on to. And by doing so, allowing myself to really feel the fear fully, and all the stuff that we want to kind of solve, like the discomfort and you let all that being there.
Yeah.
And I'm here feeling this, but it gives me access to everything else that would potentially get blocked, like love.
Yeah.
And you block one emotion, I learned from Andy, you block everything, right?
That's precisely what's kept me frozen for so long, is like, because I kept, and I guess this is also universal, is like the biggest mirrors are always intimate relationships, or relationships in general, connections with other people. And I kept bumping into this pattern where a romantic partner would be there and say, hey, I want access to your heart, and I'm not getting it. And I was like, I know, but I also don't know how to go there. And this sort of gradual thawing process that's I think finished now, more or less. It's like, in order to feel the beauty and the rawness and the life and the excitement of life, I fuck, man, all all that dark stuff, all that trauma, all that wounding, all that also has to be felt, and felt again, and invited in again. And like, this is, I think, is a lifelong process, where it's a constant invitation of all that I feel, all my emotions, I do it as a practice sometimes now, when I feel like I go a bit somber. Like, I just invite my demons. I say, okay, guys, I hear you circle around. I feel you circle around my head. There's loneliness. There's feeling small. There's anger. There's resentment. There's shame. And I just invite all these characters around the table and say, so what do you got for me?
There was something that hit me as well as you spoke, and actually we did move a little bit away from healing family relationships. But that's okay.
That seems to be a bit of the thing with this show, right? Like,
you heal yourself, or you find peace in yourself, then your relationships no longer are an issue, because you will transform the way you project onto them.
Yeah, I was gonna take that another step further with Niels at the moment, because I was thinking of the book, and I was then thinking of what he had just said, and I was thinking, at least in my own life, then to what degree have you made peace that you are just like your father?
Andy, cheers.
Now it's the hot seat, finally. I managed to dodge that bullet for, I think, a good almost an hour. But no, that's another movement of embrace. But it's deeper than that, because like, I've spent like a powerful motivator throughout my life has been not to become like my father. So doing everything sort of the opposite. I mean, it's a classical, psychological reaction, right? Either you copy or you go the other way. So I went the other way. But it's undeniable, and this, I mean, a month together in former Yugoslavia for this book is like, I mean, the similarities are so big that I'm also celebrating a lot, because that's one also takeaway from the book, is that I saw so many beautiful sides in him that I'd also kind of shoved under the carpet, like the way he's quirky, the way he's funny, the way he dares breaking social conventions, the way he looks at the world and dares like speaking his voice. There's a lot of stuff that's actually really beautiful in him, and that I now dare to like cultivate and let blossom in myself more as well. And there's a last element to this as well, is that also through the book writing and through sort of sealing off this whole process, I'm also now far more free of his internalized voice, where I can actually say, yes, my father's in me, I'm in my father, you and I, genes and all that, and I am my own man. And I can actually decide to fly as high as I want. I don't have to stay in the lane of the family, the male family dynamic of my father's line, which is very, very depressed, very, very imploded, very, keep yourself small, very traumatized. My father's father had a tremendous concentration camp trauma. So it's all very, you can see how trauma like gets passed on over the generations. So there's this very strong, and psychedelics, sorry to put the subject again, but have been powerful also in the decision to, it stops with me.
Yeah.
And I had a powerful conversation with my father the other day when I phone him up regularly, and then he starts ranting, about, that he drank too much alcohol again, and how he feels rubbish, and how he had a phone call with his brothers and they feel rubbish too, blah, 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 blah. And I take it, I take it. And after 20 minutes like that, stop it, like, and then really giving it like back to him. And I said, I'm different. I literally said it to him, and he said, oh, that's a little arrogant to say. And I'm like, no, that's not arrogant. I am different. You have no idea about who I am and what life I'm living. And we got a little like spiky as we do, like these two, he got a little her and I got a little her. And then half an hour later, as we wrapped up the conversation, he actually came back to it and said, that was actually a beautiful transmission you gave me, son, of like, I now understand on a deeper level that you are actually living in your own universe, and that I do not have a clear grasp on what you're doing and who you are.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we just went over the hour, but I see we can probably do a whole nother hour. In fact, I already have an hour in my head planned out that I've been trying to find someone to talk about, which was the journey through psychedelics. So I think that might, if you want to come back, that might be our next show. Oh, we dropped off.
Yeah, he dropped off by himself.
That wasn't the intent, but I think that was more of a issue than a decision. But we'll leave it there, and we'll come back, since at least we'll talk about what I'd love to do with Niels on another call.
Yeah,
because I do see like three things that we even got into that we could unpack for another hour at least.
Yeah.
It
really it really feels when we do these shows, we're just having so much fun together.
Yeah, of course. And then at the end, you see an hour, and you're like, yeah, we could go on for another hour, and you realize, wow, at some point, you have to cap it. Yeah, this was a great show. I mean, for me, there's a beauty, of course, in being, like we said yesterday, right? It was a very similar show for me yesterday. When someone is living their passion and then they're going out in the world and taking the risks, then people will, in some ways, follow that vibration, and then they'll actually benefit from it. They'll feel closer to themselves because they feel another person taking risks that they might not be taking themselves. Yeah. So that's really beautiful, and it was great. Yeah.
Thanks for another great show, Andy.
Thank you, Bambos, Charles, to meet you, and we'll see you next time on A Wonderful Chaos.
Yeah.